Dear customers, welcome to another one of our Tips and Tricks podcast series. I'm Milena Kiranjiska. I lead the customer success team for SAP Concur over here in the UK. Now, today's theme, indeed, is cost control and maximizing profitability. What kind of features and functionalities on Concur can actually help organizations to manage better their costs and indeed maximize some of the profitability on their bottom line? Well, there are a few I would love to share with you today. And without further ado, let us begin. So the easiest way of controlling unnecessary spend is to actually have non-allowable expenses. Most of you, if you're administrators, you would know that when setting up Concur, you will be setting up the list of allowable expenses for your end users or certain group of users. And there are certain expenses that shouldn't be allowable. It's a long list, so I might end up actually checking back with my computer, but this typically will include business class airfare, seat upgrades, hotel movies, flowers, gifts. It could be spouse, family travel, minibar, very interesting stuff actually. Frequent flyer charges, a lot. Now, I do recognize that some of our customers are actually going to have to include some of this in their available expenses list. And if you must, then my advice is create an audit rule that every time a non-allowable expense type is selected, that the user must enter a comment in the comment box before submitting that expense claim. That way you will understand and justify why that expense is being submitted on behalf of the business. Now, the next tip I wanted to talk to you about is about limiting expense types or expenses based on a time frame. You can build an audit rule or simply use your compliance controls section of your admin site, whereby you can define that certain expenses can have a limit based on a time frame. So, for example, I could say that you're only allowed to submit a parking expense once a day, or I could set a weekly limit for all meal expenses. So if you submit breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe the weekly limit for all of them is £70 a week. You might max your limit in 2 days. You might spread it out over 5 days. However, I've seen a lot of organizations actually making the most of having a time limit besides having an expense amount limit. You will find it useful if you actually start using it. And my next thing I wanted to talk to you about was a small feature actually that will serve the end user, but ultimately the finance department. There is an area in Concur Expense for the end user called View Transactions tab. Most of us will be using a company credit card. And particularly if it's a company paid credit card, we might as well forget to submit that expense in time, simply because the company is settling the bill and it's not my out of pocket. But there is a View Transactions page on the Concur Expense screen that will default into unsubmitted charges. You can always default it to something else, to charges this month or this week. But yeah, I highly likely recommend that you maybe urge your users to regularly review their View Transactions page. But talking about transactions that are not submitted, there is something else you can do. And you, as a finance person, as an administrator, you will highly likely find this very valuable. Run the Accrual Report. In your administration folder of the reporting tool, you will find a report called Expense Accrual. This will list all of your expenses that might have been assigned to an expense claim that isn't submitted for approval or has been submitted for approval and isn't approved yet. More than that, it will actually list all of the expenses and all of the transactions that are just sitting there for the end user as available expenses. They could be expenses captured with their mobile app or with Expensit. Expensit, as you know, will take the receipt image, convert it into a line item, and that will actually be an available expense. And the user might simply forget to collect them in one expense report and just submit them in time. So running the expense accrual report will not only give you visibility into pretty much who's not submitting or not approving expenses, but also it is a clear data in one place of all of your outstanding liabilities, particularly when it comes to month-end reporting. You could customize the accrual report to include your general ledger codes, account codes, etc. But I highly recommend using the accrual report. And in combination with the accrual report, you could actually look in the same folder. You have another report called top employees with unsubmitted credit card transactions. So you could go a level deeper and actually figure out all liabilities on your credit cards. So my next tip will be about VAT. And in line with the theme we have today, which is controlling cost and maximizing profitability, one of the ways you could actually get some additional cash on your bottom line is VAT refund. While most of our customers in the UK are reclaiming their VAT domestically with the HMRC, majority of them do not have resources or expertise to do that to do the VAT refund from abroad. And majority of customers will actually have expenses that are being incurred abroad. Business travel or simply visiting other offices abroad. This is literally money left on the table. Now, the best thing about it is that we have number of partners that are directly linked to our SAP Concur platform, such as Taxback International, VAT IT. These guys are experts in VAT. They have expertise in multiple jurisdictions. They have their offices, their people, and their technology. They can scan the expenses, the receipts. They will be able to evaluate how much is reclaimable on your foreign expenses, and they can reclaim it on your behalf. This is always money you highly likely do not bring back to your business, but I do recommend look into our App Center or talk to your client success manager when it comes to foreign VAT reclaim, even domestic. If you don't have enough resources, then definitely call us for help. Now, the next tip I do want to talk to you about is about driving some cost control or some control on your supplier invoice process. And for those of you guys that actually have our invoice tool that automates your supplier invoice process, many of you might be familiar with the purchase order module. So the tip that I'm about to share is about the Pio Match Rules. So you as an administrator can actually set a variance for maybe the unit price or your quantity, quality. So anything that's related to that purchase order and that invoice that you might actually tolerate a variance in. And that way the system will know whether, there is a 1% mismatch, but I can auto-approve it or move it forward in the approval workflow, or maybe raise a red flag. So for those of you that do have the supplier invoice tool from Concur, make sure to look into your Pio matching rules. While we're talking about matching and invoices, I'm not sure how many of you have this, but you probably would like to have it. 3-way match. We do have the feature. We can allow our invoice customers to have a 3-way match so that you can automatically link your invoices, your purchase orders, and receipts you receive from goods or services rendered. And this will definitely give you confidence in what is it you're paying at the end. So if you don't know where to find this and activate it, please reach out to either our support teams or your client success manager. But a 3-way matching is one of those things that our customers like to have. Now, we'll stay on the supplier invoice topic, but I'll go back to reporting. I did mention the expense accrual report. In your invoice folder in the reporting tool, you also have a invoice accrual report. This will, as you can imagine, list all of your invoices that haven't been associated to a payment request, or they have been submitted for approval, but they've been unapproved. This will give you quite quite a good view on all of your outstanding liabilities towards vendors. And again, you can customize this. You can add certain codes like department codes, obviously general ledger account codes. Our customers particularly like customizing the invoice accrual report. So if anything, check it out first and then see how you would like to modify it. Now, my next tip is actually about a report called Purchase Orders and Associated Payment Requests. Then why this? Now, more than half of my customers that use our invoice tool do have something called blanket POs. So you raise one purchase order and then you might be receiving invoices throughout the quarter or throughout the year. And there is no easy way of checking this unless you actually have an automated platform to be checking. And the Concur Invoice tool can actually do that. So you will be having one blanket PO, invoices will be captured in your Concur tool. These are payment requests, they're associated, they will match the PO number, everything will be done. At some point down the line, you as an administrator might want to run this report, purchase orders and associated payment requests, and just see where you are. Where are my purchase orders and how many invoices have been matched to them? It's an amazing way of providing you visibility without actually having to shuffle through a lot of paper or reports in your ERP system. And ultimately, there is actually an amazing dashboard. There are multiple dashboards, but there is a particular one I wanted to bring your attention to. Our expense and invoice spend management dashboards. You can actually have both of them in one. You will need our consultative intelligence service to combine all of your employee spend on both expense, travel, and invoice into one beautiful dashboard, or you can have them separate. The invoice spend management or the expense spend management dashboard, they will track your major matrices, such as your operational elements of how long does it take for a claim to be submitted, paid, my top spenders, where am I spending my money, how quickly am I paying, which vendors am I using, how many compliance rules have been violated, if any, how much do they cost me if I have approved certain expense with an exception on it. Everything, rather than running 5, 6, 7 different reports, you can actually run one dashboard. It will give you everything. Same goes for your invoice. All the invoice data, purchase order data in one dashboard, so that you can quickly understand how are you spending. You can actually understand employee behavior at a glance. Who you're spending with. Are there multiple vendors, yet same spend category? This typically happens maybe with office supplies or even IT equipment. I can find countless examples why having a dashboard that brings data from every side of your spend management process in one place is important. But I won't be going there anymore. I think I've said a lot by now, and hopefully, if you do anything when you walk away from this podcast, is go into the reporting tool, find these dashboards, or navigate into your invoice accrual or expense accrual reports, and figure out whether this data can actually point out to places where you can better manage your cost. And don't forget your VAT reclaim and our App Center and all the partners that could help. So that's all from me today. We will speak soon again. Thank you and take care.